Just wanted to touch on one of them today. And there's reoccurring themes on a lot of them, but the one today I want to talk about, just remember these key points. Stay in faith. You're not alone. And there's probably not too many coincidences in God's story. At least it's been my experience that doesn't happen. So, at any rate, the story, who knows about medical and nurses and shift changes? There's nurses work 12 hours and 12 hours. When's the shift change normally? What time? Anybody? Maybe different ones, but Potomac is Centerra, where I'm at, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
They work 7 at night, 7 in the morning, 7 in the morning, 7 at night. So I go see my, come on, Gay. I go see my oncologist one morning, 10 o'clock, get some labs done, blood work done. I need platelets, so I need some blood, so like blood platelets. He sends me to the hospital, and this was back when we first started. Sent me to the infusion center, and it's a big room in the hospital, 30 beds, a lot of stuff they do with people. And they hooked me all up, IVs, and said, we'll order your stuff, we'll have it about noon. Okay. What were the three things I'd mentioned? Stay in faith. You're not alone.
No coincidences.
No coincidences. I'm fine. I sit there, and noontime comes, nothing. 1 o'clock comes, nothing. 2 o'clock comes, there's a little problem. That's what I hear from the charge nurses. And as a patient, you don't like to hear there's a problem. Because if they're saying that, that's probably relates to you, and what's the problem? The problem is the blood banks around there had no platelets for my type. And yet my legs are turning blue from low platelet count. I need these things. So the second thing to remember, again, stay in faith. 2:30 comes, we found some. Great. Just relax, sit back, turn on TV, go to sleep, whatever, because I'm still all hooked up to the IV setup. 3 o'clock comes, we have a problem. Those platelets weren't there. They searched all around, everywhere. They couldn't find anything. 4 o'clock comes. We found some, Paul. They're in Baltimore, Maryland. Okay? I forgot to mention, too, this story, this is the reason I picked it, too. This happened between Thanksgiving and Christmas. This is right around this time of year. Friday afternoon, we found your platelets. They're in Baltimore at that blood bank. Do we know what traffic looks like around 95 on a Friday afternoon between Christmas and New Year or Thanksgiving? Murder, right? Oh, no, we'll have them. If you want to wait, we'll get them to you. If you want to go home, we can unhook you and do all this, go home, come back tomorrow. What would you like to do? What do you do? What do we do? Stay in faith. Right? I need it. No coincidences, right? I'm here for a reason. My blue legs tell me that I'm here for a reason. I need this. I don't know why. I don't know why the delay, but I know there's a reason. So, no, I'm already hooked up. You've already stuck me. I'll stay. And I'm saying in my mind, Baltimore is 60 miles. If you double that, 30 miles an hour for the traffic, Uh, they'll be here 6:30 or so, right? 4:30, 6:30 I'll have. They forgot to tell me that the platelets were in Baltimore. They had to send a vehicle from Woodbridge to Baltimore to get them, and then back. Okay? So that's another maybe 2 hours, right? At 5 o'clock, the charge nurse comes, the infusion center is shutting down. They go home for the night. Okay, they can't leave me in this center alone. But I'm not alone, right?
Praise God.
Where am I going? What do I do? Well, we'll have to find a room for you to wait because we can't leave you in here. And once they get here, then the nurses can administer it and you're done. But we really don't want to put you in a room we can't really put you in a room without admitting you because that's against hospital policy and so on and so forth. So finally they work the details out and they find a room and it's down the hall here by itself, and they put me in there, and your platelets will be here when they get here, okay? So time goes by and time goes by, and I'm thinking they really just forgot because nothing's happening. Nobody knows about the platelets. Nothing's going on. And nobody's coming down the hall. No nurse is coming in. No blood pressure checks. I'm just there waiting. Okay? But I knew I'm there for a reason. What's the reason? Well, 8 o'clock comes now, so we're 4 hours into this drive to Baltimore and back. And not by chance, but by design, one of the heart and vascular technicians that I've had for a year or so just happened to be walking down that hall, returning a piece of equipment, and he looked in and saw me in that room. He said, "Man, what are you doing here?" I told him. We had the best 15-minute chat we could have ever had. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I had the chance to converse with him that I never would have had if I wasn't waiting for the platelets, right? And not only that, but at least 8 nurses, charge nurses, scrub nurses, higher up business managers, I don't know, my whole world of people that were at that hospital that helped me over the last 2 years were there for a reason. And I was there for a reason, right? And each one of them came down the hall at different times and realized, "Man, what are you doing here? Nobody's here. Nobody's supposed to be here. It's quitting time. I don't have you on my chart. Just happens to come by and see." And we could talk back and forth, wish each other happy holidays, Merry Christmas, thank you for the work you've done. And that was why I was there. That was the coincidence. So the platelets finally showed up. I finished the infusion. My son comes. We wait there, 11 o'clock, 11:30, I'm discharged. Best night of the month, or maybe the year.
Praise God.
Okay? And all because I didn't get upset. I didn't question why. I knew the timing was there. This was happening for a reason. So you stay in faith, and you understand that, and good things happen. Somebody else coined the phrase, maybe, and Joel Osteen likes to use it. Somebody else I hear wrote a book about it, but many times you'll have these setbacks, I've found. And a setback may be a temporary pushback for something like this. But in essence, it's a set up for something great. So people don't like setbacks, but when you view them in that set of circumstances, it's just setting you up so you can fulfill your destiny.
Thank you, Kenny.
Good?
Thank you.
All right.
Everybody has a story.
Many.
Everybody has many stories. Yeah, thank you. Robert, we're going to start chapter 2. So Bob's going to come up and read Matthew chapter 2 for us, and then we'll get into the Bible study.
Matthew chapter 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard that he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. The escape to Egypt. When they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said. "Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." So he got up, took the child and his mother during the night, and left for Egypt, where he stayed until the death of Herod. And was so fulfilled what the Lord had said through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I called my son." When Herod realized that he had been outwitted by the Magi, he was furious, and he gave orders to kill all the boys in Bethlehem and its vicinity who were 2 years old and under, in accordance with the time he had learned from the Magi. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. "A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted, because they are no more." The return to Nazareth. After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and the mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard of that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father, Herod, he was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, he will be a child of Nazareth.
Thank you, Bob. He's read that twice for us now. Good guy. Thank you, Bob. Okay, so we are in Matthew chapter 2, and I entitled this Lost and Found. Lost and Found. So the wise men from the east are most likely from the area of Babylon and Iraq, which is east of Israel. And they were religious scholars. They studied the stars and the planets and all the bodies above the Earth's atmosphere. And they were on the lookout for unusual cosmic events. So when they saw something unusual, they were the ones who interpreted the meaning of the event. They were schooled in Old Testament prophecy. Professor David Hughes from the University of Sheffield in England says the Magi were to the Persians a lot like the Levites were to the Jews. They instructed their kings. So when the Magi saw this rising star, they were really excited because it was brighter and more glorious than the other stars. And one theologian said they didn't just randomly follow a wandering star, they knew what they were looking for. So this particular sighting, this specific star they spotted back in Babylon, portended the coming of a king. And apparently, the whole of the Middle East and Asia was looking for a king that would come from the area of Judea at this specific moment in time. It wasn't just the Magi who were waiting for a king. The historians of the time believed that a king was coming too. The Roman historian Tacitus, who was born about 20 years after the death of Jesus, was quoted as saying, "There was a firm persuasion that at this very time the East was to grow powerful, and rulers coming from Judea were to acquire a universal empire." Let me read that again. There was a firm persuasion that at this very time the East was to grow powerful, and rulers coming from Judea were to acquire a universal empire. Now, Bob, you're an historian, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I, in my limited knowledge, do not know that there's ever been a universal empire. Okay, there have been huge empires like the Mongolian Empire under Genghis Khan. There's been the Persian Empire, the Babylonian Empire. There's been the British Empire, the Roman Empire. But I don't know if there's ever been a universal empire, and yet that's what the historians were looking for. Am I correct or not?
I think you are.
Okay. So Rome at this point in time is the major empire, and everybody knows it, but there is coming another empire from the east, and it would take the world by storm. But a quiet storm, because no one knew that this universal empire would be a spiritual empire. So I find it awesome that even historians were looking for a king. So these magi, these wise men, now's the time. They've spotted the star, and they're saying, we're going to go find this king. And this really woke up the people in their arena, okay? So, and Gay, you had asked last week, about astrologers versus astronomers. These guys are astronomers, okay? They study the cosmic light, the space, outer space. I have read that astronomers do not like astrologers because what they do is they take astronomy, which is science, like Copernicus and Halley and even Stephen Hawking, those kind of guys study, and they throw in things like psychic junk and spiritism and sorcery and stuff like that. So that becomes astrology. And that is a no-no. In Isaiah 47, God talks about burning the astrologers. So astrology, good, not good. Astronomy, good. Okay? These guys are astronomers. Okay? Does that help a little bit? Okay. So, did you know that the same star that appeared just before Jesus' arrival could be what we saw last December? Did you guys see the star? Some people call it the Christmas star. Some people call it the Bethlehem star. I watched out my front window every night with binoculars. I have these really high-power ones. I could see it, but it's not really a star. It's these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, that come so close in proximity. They appear to be a bright star. And I've been told and I've read that that's the star that these wise men saw. So how many saw that last year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Okay, myself, 6? Okay. If you did see that, you saw something that appears only once every 8 to 900 years. And we got to see it. It's only happened twice since the birth of Jesus, which is just fascinating. I'm going to climb out on a limb here, and I don't know how you feel, but I wonder if the star we saw in 2020 doesn't signify the second coming to be soon. And I really mean that. Why do I say that? Because in the Gospel of Luke, it says, there shall be signs in the heavens before his return. And just 10 days ago, on Thursday the 18th, was the longest lunar eclipse. The longest lunar eclipse in the last 600 years. It lasted like 6 hours. And there's another eclipse coming in December. So things are happening in the heavenlies. Now, I'm not a cosmologist either, so I don't know if those are normal or these are special. But I thought, am I the only one that thinks this? Or are there many people that think it? I know that there are some Christian pastors who do, like Irv Baxter, Rabbi Kahn, and John Hagee. They've all talked about signs in the skies and the second coming. Anybody see any of the blood moons that were also highly talked about over the last few years? Some of you have? Yeah. Chuck and I got some buddies together and we sat in our driveway in Denver and we got our binoculars out and had a party, a blood moon party. It was really cool to see that. They're so unusual. And then one time we were up in the mountains at a church function and we were coming down into Denver late at night from the Rockies. And we saw supermoon, and oh my gosh, this thing looked to be like 100 times the size of the moon. And it looked like it was sitting right on the ground. I have never in my life seen anything so spectacular. It was phenomenal. So I thought, okay, am I the only one that thinks perhaps the Lord is returning soon? Well, no, I'm not. Let's see here. Yeah, I looked up an article done by Pew Research, and they say like 41% of people right now believe that Jesus will come back soon. Now, that's not a totally high percentage, but that's almost half the population, And then there's a Lifeway research group out of Nashville, and they studied pastors, and they said 97% of all black pastors believe the return is imminent. And 9 out of 10, all of the pastors believe his return is imminent. So sink your teeth into that. That's something to chew on. Okay, and this research was done not years ago, it was done in 2020. Okay. So these magi traveled to Jerusalem looking for this king. And they are beyond excited. I can imagine they got all their gifts wrapped and put in their saddlebags waiting to take them. Now, Jesus has already been born when they arrive in Jerusalem, so they ask around about the baby, and nobody seems to know. So Herod finds out. He hears that these guys are asking questions, and he invites them to the palace. And he said, well, tell me what you're talking about. And they said, well, this king is to be born. We saw his star rise in the east. And so he calls in his chief priests And he says, you know, what are they talking about? And the chief priests say, well, yeah, there's this scripture that says that a baby will be born who's the king of the Jews in Bethlehem. So Herod's upset. The people of Jerusalem are disturbed. And, you know, even the chief priests, I suppose they're wowed too. Even though they have this information, they're probably astounded too, because they know a baby's going to be born, but now, at this time, I think if somebody told me that right now, I'd be kind of disturbed. They were too. So Herod is told he will be born in Bethlehem. Does anybody know what Bethlehem means? Means house of bread. How profound is that? Why is that so profound? Bethlehem means house of bread. Because Jesus is the bread of life. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. So Bethlehem is this fertile place. They grow barley there, they grow wheat there, they raise sheep there. It's really high on a cliff. It's on the sandstone cliff about 2,000 feet up. And it's kind of settled in a bowl between the ends of this, not cliff, but yeah, it's a sandstone ridge, I guess. And the houses are built into or in front of the ridge in this bowl. And behind them are caves that have been carved out, or down below them, and that's where they used to house their sheep and their goats and their donkeys. And this is where this baby is born. A king is born in a cave. How appropriate for a servant king to be born in a cave. So Herod sends these magi on their way to find the baby. I was kind of confused, like, why would Herod send the magi to find the baby and not his soldiers? Why do you suppose that might have been?
Were they regarded more than his soldiers? Were they regarded more than his soldiers?
Were they regarded more than his soldiers? I don't know.
By the people? I mean, you know that Herod was, in a sense, people conscious, statement to his.
That could be, yeah.
Meaning his soldiers could be trusted.
Say that?
His soldiers could be trusted, but he didn't send his soldiers.
He didn't send the soldiers, he sent the magi instead of the soldiers. I just wondered, I mean, it's no big, huge deal, but it is a big deal in a way. I think it's like Paul says, there's no coincidences. Okay, had he done that, there might have been a very different story we find. But
was he trying to, like, the pretense of going to honor this baby? If he sent soldiers, it would have sort of made people more nervous. Maybe they would have moved.
that's certainly a possibility as well. Yeah. I thought perhaps it was, the soldiers wouldn't even know who they're looking for anyway, so why waste their time, you know? And then Herod probably, I mean, he's gotten this really strange news. He needs to kind of collect himself and figure out what to do, you know? So he sends them off. So they're off and running, and then back in Jerusalem, while Herod is figuring out what to do, the Magi find Jesus in a house, not in a cave, in a house with his mother Mary. He's probably about 2 years old at this time. And these Magi find him, they bow down, and they present gifts to him. And I'm sure you all know what the gifts are, so who knows what the gifts are? Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold, the king of metals. It's a gift you would give a king. Okay, frankincense, a gift you would give a priest, because a priest uses frankincense as incense in the temple. Okay, and myrrh. Myrrh is like, you've seen amber, a resin. It's kind of like that, but it smells very perfumey, and it comes from these little thorn bushes. It's used to embalm, so that would be a gift that you would give to somebody who is going to die. Okay. Now, I was thinking about that, and I thought, okay, this resin comes from these little thorn bushes, and an embalming thing. I wonder if those were the thorn bushes that they cut to make the crown of thorns for the Lord. I don't know. Okay, so not only do they give him gifts, but what else do they do?
Worship him.
They worship him. Yeah. These are guys from Babylon. And being Babylonian, they would have worshipped the god Marduk. But they're worshiping this Jesus, which just says to me that when you find the Lord of Lords, you fall down and worship. Okay?
And maybe there was something in them, that they were seeking something more, I'm not gonna say more than just a king, because they were seeking King Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.
Yes.
But they maybe somehow intuitively knew that they were seeking something bigger than anything they had ever seen or witnessed or.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you have an encounter with Jesus Christ, that will blow your socks off. I've never seen him. David Harper has seen him. He told us that story when he preached here. He saw Jesus. I've not. Oh, but I can't imagine if you do, you just fall down and worship. Remember in the garden in Gethsemane, when all the guys are coming from to get Jesus and they're going to take him away, they say, he says, "Who are you looking for?" And they say, "We're looking for Jesus of Nazareth." He says, "I am he." What do? They fall down. I mean, they just fall down, which is, so when you're in the presence of Jesus, you know you're in the presence of something mighty. So these men who would never ordinarily worship any gods besides their gods are worshiping this child. So affirmations are starting to add up to point to the fact that this child is truly the Savior. Okay, so far we have Mary, who's spoken to by an angel who visited her. We have Joseph, who's been spoken to by an angel in a dream that informs him that it's okay, it's safe to take Mary as his wife. And it's interesting, in this dream, this angel calls him the son of David. Now his dad is Jacob, but he says Joseph, son of David. And Joseph, so I think Joseph needed to hear that. He really needed that because, being a good Jew, he would know that the Savior was coming from the line of David. So for him to be called the son of David, another affirmation for them. And now there's this third affirmation. It's these wise men, okay? Joseph's now about 21 years of age. Mary's about 17. Jesus is about 2 years of age. And this young couple is in need of another affirmation to tell them that they have heard the Lord correctly. And it comes by way of these unknown and unexpected men who show up at their door with these wildly prophetic, inexpensive gifts.
They were rich men, they were wealthy men, they were well-dressed. I mean, what our portrayal that we see in pictures and paintings, I don't know that that's what they were,
Yeah.
but, they were nothing to.
Well, they've been called three kings, they've been called the Magi, they've been called wise men. So they're extraordinary people. And they show up at this little kid's door, If God calls you to a task, he will affirm that he's called you to that task along your way. You need it. I'm sure when you were going through the discernment process for seminary, the Lord just, doors would open, doors would close, people would come around you. Yeah. So you get affirmations to know that you are walking in the Lord's path. And these two young kids who are now parents, they need these affirmations, and God is giving them to them. Okay, so not only do Joseph and Mary need affirmations, but the wise men do too. So they've given their gifts, they've paid their homage, and then they have a dream. And what does this dream tell them to do?
Don't go back to Herod.
Don't go back to Herod. Meanwhile, back in Jerusalem, we have the seedy king pacing the floor and wringing his hands, and Herod, he's beside himself, okay? Now, he is a decent man in some ways. His infrastructure plans were great. He built a beautiful temple. He makes sure the people are fed, and when financial troubles hit the area, he sometimes remits their taxes to help them get by. But he's a suspicious man, because even though he has this title, the King of the Jews, he knows it's only because the Romans gave that to him, okay? He is not a pure-blooded Jew. He's Idumean. So he's half Jew and half Edomite, and this fact alone makes him nervous. And it scares him because now this real Jewish king has been announced, and he doesn't want any rivals. So Herod, as I said, wasn't totally bad at first. There's a story that at one point during the famine, it got so bad that he melted down his own golden plate and bought corn to feed the people. But he becomes a paranoid murderer over his years in office. He kills his wife, Mariamne. He kills 3 of his sons. He kills his mother-in-law. Kills a whole slew of people. And at age, as he's nearing age 70, he's riddled with disease. He knows he's going to die. And he knows that he doesn't have much time left, so he knows no one will shed a tear on the announcement of his death because he's so hated. And he arranges a big gathering in Jericho, and he calls a lot of the Israelite elites. And he says, meet me in Jericho. So he goes to the palace in Jericho, these people show up, and he tells his soldiers, the moment I die, kill them all. And they're killed. This really happens. Because he wants somebody to shed a tear on the day of his death. That's the kind of man that Herod is. So I skipped just a little bit ahead just to give you a picture of his disposition. So let's go back to the Magi. Before Herod's death, Herod finds out that the Magi have gone home a different way. Okay? They have no intention of coming back and talking to him. So he's livid. He goes into a rage. He's on a warpath. And he's just drooling for blood. So Joseph's given another dream. What's that dream?
Go to Egypt.
Go to Egypt. Yeah, go to Egypt. So he gets up immediately. He gets the dream, he gets up at night, takes them, heads out. Okay, they head to Egypt. But why Egypt? Go ahead.
Maybe because Herod wasn't in charge there and they were out of his area of authority. I don't know.
Yes, for sure. But also to fulfill another prophecy. It says, I'll bring my son. Out of Egypt have I called
We
my
read that.
son.
I've read that this morning.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
How, I mean, it doesn't mention it anywhere, but you figure if they're kings, that means they're surrounded by a huge entourage that traveling with them.
Joseph and Mary.
The Magi's are
Yeah.
kings, right?
Well, I don't know. I know they're wise men. They're
Well,
scholars. Yeah.
anybody, any elite's gonna have servants.
Yeah.
So how does a large crowd disappear without Herod knowing instantly?
I don't know, but the word that Bob read was they outwitted the king. Somehow they laid a plan. Maybe they left at night, you know.
Maybe God shut their eyes.
It could be, and God will do that. God does sometimes shut your eyes. Something can be right in front of you and you don't even see it. It's just, that's true. So I don't know. Good question.
There was no Facebook.
There you go. Well, I found it interesting because, like, Moses leads the Jews out of Egypt after 400 years of captivity. Now this Jesus is coming out of Egypt after 400 years of not hearing a prophet in the land of Israel. A lot of Jews lived in Egypt at that time. Apparently in Alexandria, there were at least 1 million Jews that lived there. And so when you have Mary and Joseph taking the baby to Egypt, they have a community to kind of incorporate them. So they're hiding away down in Egypt. And how providential, as Paul would say, how providential that these gifts have come their way. I mean, they're going to need money, right, from their exile, and they've got now a bag of gold. I guess it was a bag of gold. But they've got gold to see them through this exile. So, Herod finds out the date of the baby's birth, and he orders all the male babies 2 years and younger to be killed in Bethlehem. And Matthew quotes Jeremiah in his gospel. A voice was heard in Ramah. Is it Ramah? Ramah? Weeping and much lamenting. Rachel weeping for her children, and she refuses to be comforted, for they were no more. So what does this mean? Who is Rachel, and what is Ramah?
Rachel was Isaiah's wife?
Actually, no, Rachel was Jacob's wife.
Jacob's wife. But-
Yeah. So Rachel was Jacob's wife.
And Jacob was named Israel,
Jacob was named Israel.
so he's Israel's wife. The whole of the Israel.
Oh, interesting. That's a really insightful.
Yeah, that's what I always thought, even from childhood, that
Yeah.
Rachel weeping was all of Israel.
Was
weeping.
all of Israel. Okay, it could certainly be
knowing.
that. It probably is that. But also, Ramah is a city just outside of Bethlehem. Okay, and this is where Rachel is buried. So when these children are slaughtered, when they're massacred, these are her descendants. These are her descendants. Okay, so the Holy Family stays in Egypt for about 2 years, and then Herod dies, thank heaven. Good riddance. We don't need certain people. And Joseph has a dream. What does the dream tell him? Come back. Yeah, go back to Israel. Okay, but he's terrified because of Archelaus, Herod's son, who's now the king in that arena, in that area. Okay, so he's given another dream. What does that dream tell him to do?
Not be afraid.
Not be afraid.
To go to Galilee.
Go to Galilee. Head north. Okay, so you've got all of Israel, and he goes north. Now Galilee has a lot of Jews in it, obviously. It's part of Israel. But it also has many, many, many Gentiles in it, people who don't believe in the Jewish Yahweh. Okay, so that's where they head up. They go to Galilee, and this also fulfills another prophecy that Jesus is to be called a Nazarene. And we probably better stop there because it's 10:15. So, do we have time for one little thing? Okay, here's just as cool. As I was reading this, I was just so fascinated with the cosmology and the stars and all these cool things happening that I remember taking one of our grandkids to a Michael W. Smith concert, and he played this song called "A Million Lights," and they handed everybody that came in a light stick, and then people also had their phones. So when he played this song, the song is about all the stars that are singing to God. It's so beautiful. And so they turned off all the auditorium lights except the stage lights. And everybody had their phones on and light sticks, and it was working. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's like the supermoon. It's just so overpowering. So let me see if I can find that song for you real quickly here. It's so pretty. Here we go. Do you know stars sing? Do you know every planet has its own hum? It hums. Yeah, they have taken, because Chuck used to watch tons of cosmology and stuff with Sean Carroll and some of these physicists on TV and these TED Talks. Yeah, you get near a star and it hums. It has its own resonant frequency. The stars are singing to God. And this is